Careers don't stall because of lack of talent. They stall because of lack of clarity, courage, and connection. Welcome to the Voice of Impact, where belief meets action. Our podcast amplifies stories, systems, and solutions behind meaningful change. I'm your host, Robert Ndoping. Today's conversation explores what it truly means to grow, and not just professionally, but personally, and how intentional leadership and talent development can reshape workplace culture from the inside out. My guest today is Steve Higginbotham, also known as Steve Higgy, the coffee coach, a leading authority in talent acquisition and career progression. Steve is a talent acquisition expert, motivational speaker, author, and mentor who brings a bold perspective and transformative methodology to help professionals navigate complex career landscapes with clarity and confidence. Known for cultivating impactful partnerships and cohesive teams, Steve enhances communication and strengthens leadership. He uplifts workplace cultures and drives meaningful employee engagement. But beyond the titles, what truly sets Steve apart is his commitment to purposeful action and intentional leadership. He doesn't just speak, he connects. His energy ignites rooms, and his message doesn't just land intellectually, it's felt and acted upon. Steve challenges leaders to raise their expectations, dismantle limiting beliefs, and build a mindset that fuels unstoppable progress. Steve, welcome. We're excited to have you today on the Voice of Impact show.
Thank you, Robert. I really appreciate that intro. I'm blessed to be here, and I thank you so much. I'm excited.
Yes, Steve. Before we talk talent acquisition and leadership systems, I'd love to start with you. What's a story that shaped your passion for helping people grow in their careers?
Yep. That's a great question. I love that. So I noticed on about 15 years of age, as a young gentleman, young boy, I always wanted to have a greater purpose. Didn't know what it was, didn't know where I was going, but I had that inner passion that there was something more for me than just a job or just going to school. And it was a drive. And over the years, 35 plus years, I've been seeking that and trying to find where my passion aligns with a greater purpose, greater than me, greater than a title, greater than a company or position. And I've always strived to interconnect those, but it's that alignment, it's that balance.
Wow. It really shows 15 years of age. So, what was that defining moment where you saw talent being overlooked or misunderstood? And what made that shift?
When I was out of high school, by trade, I was a pool cleaner and wonderful, fun job, but it wasn't a career for me. That was one of the first defining moments that I had. About 4 years into it, I might have been having some fun and traveling around all within California, but realizing there was really no set goal. And here I am looking back at my younger self, which was only a couple years at the time, saying that I'm really not living my purpose. And I decided to join the Navy. One of the best things that I did, not only did it teach me attention to detail, but it taught me a lot about myself, my resilience, my grit. And ultimately, it allowed me to open up. I was a very shy young boy. And now it's my wife says you can't, once that egg is cracked, you can't put me back in there. The yolk's out. I'm not shy anymore. And my defining moment was I knew that I needed to go travel, I needed to go see things, I needed to have different jobs and different kind of work life, what I call harmony, not just talk about it, not just read about it. And that's why when you did the intro, like it's felt and acted upon. I had to live that experience and I had to change my life. And that was my first defining moment.
Steve, you've mentioned some very key words here and words that I fully align with. Talked about purpose, you talked about resilience. You talked about a lot of good things that shifted in your life. During these moments, who were you becoming before you had a language of the coffee coach?
So for me, there's a lot of transformation. And, some people talk about seasons and evolutions. And I know, like working with the US Navy SEALs, it's all about just focus on your evolution right here, right now. Um, I know folks that are like addicted and recovering, their focus on take it one day at a time. And so for me, that transformation, what I was feeling and what I was going through was different little journeys, so little tiny sprints along this huge, not even a marathon, it was like an ultra marathon. And I'm not even through or across the finish line yet. I still have some more growing to do, some more transformation. But for me, the transformation that I was feeling was being comfortable in uncomfortable situations. And I have this little catchphrase that I just tell myself. Um, I'm even hesitant to share it because sometimes it might not resonate with people, but it's like playing soccer with the Tasmanian devil. You just don't know where that ball's going to go, but you're running up and down the field and you might be chasing the Tasmanian devil trying to get the ball because ultimately the goal is to score. And that's kind of how my transformation through my career and my life, joining the military, exiting the military, having children, going from one career in the military to another career, then leaving that career after 10 years and going into consulting. There's just so much transformation that you're kind of all over the place. However, if you have a true vision of where you want to be, where you want to end up, it doesn't matter what your journey is or what the transformation is, you're eventually going to get there if that is your focus, if that is your intent. And some people talk about don't be chasing. So don't chase the Taz around the field and get the ball. Attract it. Focus on your journey, and eventually they'll come into your zone and you're able to kick the ball in the goal. So I hope that kind of made sense. A little chaotic, but you got to control that chaos.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I just want to join the dots here. How was it in the military and the transition into what you're doing right now? Just give us an idea. So, maybe there might be some people going through some of that transition and framing phase of
Yeah.
learning purpose, resilience, transition, and then getting into where they want to be.
So the way I have framed it in my career now and looking back, and you talk about the Navy and the transition, but it's always about a purpose. There's always passion, and then you have to be intentional about that and somehow align those. And some days there's good days and there's bad day, but the vision doesn't ever waver, doesn't ever shift. So joining in the military, the intention was I need to kind of start over. I need to click the reset button, and there's something there that they're going to offer me. It's not just me out there serving America and serving the world and going out there and doing my diligence. There's something I'm going to get. So selfishly, I knew I'm going to come back a changed man and ultimately come back a man going in as a young adult. What I learned from them was I learned how you can work 24 hours without sleep. That's capable. You can focus on working in an environment that maybe isn't flourishing, meaning that you're in a very high pressured situation and you have people putting pressure on you, yelling at you, telling you to do this stuff. And it's intense at times, but you can work through that. You have to have a calming inner self about it. But you also learn that resilience, that grit. But one of the things that I've learned the most from the military that I've taken into my professional and even my personal life is attention to detail. You do things in repetition and you do it a lot, but there's also sometimes you do something for the first time. You may not know what you're doing, but you're in a situation, and maybe it's a testing environment. It's not in wartime or anything that's, death defying, but you've got to have attention to detail. And you come into it to understand what is that specific mission. In other words, what's that task? How are you going to complete it successfully? How does it not only impact you as a person, but how does it impact the greater team or the entire ship as a whole? You take those lessons, you put those now into work, and there's no ship, but there's a company. There's a team in the military, there's a department in a company. You take that evolution of transformation from yourself with attention to detail. And that's how I've approached every single job that I've had, every single company, from hiring people to working with C-suite leaders on who to hire and who not to hire. What is the level of detail that's needed at that moment for that task?
I just love that attention to detail. I mean, when I was growing up, I loved the military because of that specific aspect. They are very organized and they pay a lot of attention to detail. And I definitely I can relate to how, you've taken all of that and, brought that into, what you do right now. So let's shift now to what you do. So you're known as a leading authority in talent acquisition and career progression. From your perspective, what's broken, or what would you say, it's broken in how organizations identify and develop talent?
So that's a great question. I love that question. It's complex because every company is a little bit different. I'll step back just briefly to say that I've been doing this for 28 years and I've worked inside of companies. I've worked for 25 plus different companies, working on different projects with different teams, different departments, different cultures. And most people underestimate the risk. Like hiring could be a risk center, and making the right decision is of the utmost importance. Most people, when you think about, okay, I need to fill a job, you talk to the hiring manager, you get a couple bullet points, you post a job, you review resumes, you interview. There's no decision in that. There's just reviewing. There's kind of surface line skimming of a resume and then going into interviews. But the goal is to prevent those mistakes, to prevent the mishires. So when I was early in my career, I was a great recruiter. And just to say it more for commentary, is I started when there was yellow pages, fax machines, and beepers. So I didn't have this whole intranet. I didn't have job postings. I didn't have free resumes. So you had to learn from the human intuition. Would this person, A, be qualified for the job? B, do they want or would they fit the culture of the person? Now there's so much technology and so many advances that are coming on that we lose that human touch. We forget what it's like to actually interview a person for a person versus having someone read a resume and consider them hireable or not. So it's reading between the lines, but it's that assessment, it's that human intuition that makes the difference. And that's sort of when I look at it when I'm recruiting candidates or when I'm hiring for talent within a company, it's connecting those dots, but it's making sure that you have the appropriate person, not the most qualified on paper, because let's face it, resumes are outdated. AI can write a better resume than I can, and resumes are pretty much perfect if they need to be. That is not truly that person. Get to know the person, make the right hiring. And that's sort of what's broken is we're moving too fast. So many times companies are looking for speed. I need this position filled. But if you just slow down a little bit, interview a little bit more, I know it takes a little bit more time, but there's that quality. But above and beyond that process, it's that end decision, collaborating with the hiring manager, understanding the candidate to its depth, not just a piece of paper. That is what I've been focusing on for the majority of my 28 years. And I've seen it broken so many times with so many companies. And I'm talking Fortune 100 companies and I'm talking startups alike.
I mean, yeah, I was a hiring manager for a couple of years, and I mean, sometimes I know I was looked upon differently simply because, yes, I look at resumes because it gets you into the door,
Mhm.
but I always look at the person, and they're always different. And I want to get some feedback from you as an expert in that domain, like hiring beyond resumes, that misalignment between potential and opportunity. What are hiring managers or talent acquisition experts missing or not looking for?
So for me, I have a company and I can share it later. It's called Hypo, which is high potential. And I'll give you an example I had about a year ago. I was hiring for a very important company. It was a middle level position. It was a high level individual contributor, but it was going to progress into a supervisor or management type of role. And you look at paper, they had a gentleman that was highly qualified, could do the job. The way that I sort of debunk this is when I interview the candidates, I don't necessarily share my feedback right away with the hiring manager. I let them assess the candidate and do the first round of interview. The reason I do it that way is if I share my insights, I'm sort of being biased towards one or the other type of person because I'm influencing that decision. And I don't want to have any decision on the front end. So I let them interview blindly. Then we come back and compare notes. And what people are missing is they wanted to hire this one person that was highly qualified, could do the job. Where I kind of put the brakes and put pause on was okay, you are correct. You're hiring for today, you're hiring for tomorrow. But let's talk about retention. What's going to happen in a year? This person is overpaid, underworked, meaning they could do the job probably with their eyes closed. However, are they going to be happy in a year's time? And are they going to stay in this job? So, yes, you fill the job today, but I have a feeling in a year I'm going to be refilling it. Do you want that? Because then that's your person. Or do you want this person that's a little bit junior, that maybe is a little bit sort of I would say a little bit apprehensive about doing the full role. You're going to have to train them a little bit. They fit the money. However, their potential is far greater than this other person. They want the challenge. They're going to rise to that occasion. That person's going to be here 3, 4 years from now. That's the decision quality they need. At the end of the day, it is not my decision. The hiring manager can choose. However, my job is to bring that outside, perspective and let them assess the situation to make an educated decision. Again, not off of resume, not off of an interview. All the human intuition that goes along the process. And ultimately, they did choose and decide the person that I felt was best. A year and a half later, that person's thriving. Now, again, it takes a little bit of time to train that person up, but I would rather spend 10% of my time now training than being stressed a year from now and spending 100% of my time replacing the job. And again, that's the scenario I bring to them. That's the expertise I bring to them. They still make the final decision, but now we can look at it from two different perspectives.
Yeah, that's solid. That's really solid, and that's testament of the type of work you do and how much in depth you go with your work. So, and this speaks to something which I just want you to comment on. How do systemic blind spots inside organizations quietly limit both individual careers and corporate growth?
Yeah, that's always a tricky question. I think when you look at systemic blind spots, the biggest one I see is just it really starts with the leaders. So in my teams, it's usually the CHRO or the vice president of talent acquisition and that factor. And really working with the other leaders in each different department, whether it's technology, operations, manufacturing, marketing. It's understanding that there is two cultures in a company, and some people don't get that. There is a company culture, but there's also a departmental culture. And there's an ecosystem where departments to departments have to work together. And I'm sure we've all had that one person that is challenging to work with. And then we've all had that one person that will raise their hand and do anything for you, is always dependable. And you think about those two opposite, spectrums, right? Who would you rather go to? Well, sometimes you need to go to the person that's very challenging because they have all that knowledge, but it's going to be a struggling conversation. So I'm actually working with the company now as a consultant that talks about employee engagement. And it takes the opportunity to assess each individual person for their strengths. And then it builds upon that, and it allows companies and teams to work more cohesive and better together. However, some people talk about peeling back the onion and peeling back layers, but you have to go to some level of depth to open up and understand your team dynamics and where those strengths are. But you also have to allow them room to open up. And it's almost like opening up your heart and giving it away and understanding that there's that kind of that passion behind it. And you've just got to be able to take criticism. So there has to be a level of maturity. And that doesn't always exist within a company and sometimes within a department. But if you can get to that ecosystem where you're all open, and it's beyond transparency. Transparency is the first step, but it's beyond transparency that we've just got to be cohesive in this ecosystem together. We're all working towards the common, hopefully the greater purpose. What is the department vision? What is their mission? And if you can get everybody synced on that and everybody aligned, then you can have some really enriched conversations. That is hard to do. That takes time. And usually that's not in the company's DNA from the start. The company is to make money. The company is to, here's my mission, go for it. But if you take a step back and really dive in, how are we going to get there? How are we going to work together? And if people are open to it and they embrace it and they go into it, they don't have to go to the depth that maybe you or I might go. However, let's just work together. And it is a little bit embarrassing at times because nobody wants to talk about their weaknesses. Well, these are just areas for improvement, but let's really focus on your strengths. This is where you're really good. That takes all the toxicity out of that environment, and it allows for a cohesive ecosystem within a department, and then it allows it within a company. And I haven't yet seen it fully flourish except for two companies I've worked for. Two companies have it dialed in. They're not perfect, but they have a great ecosystem and they are miles and miles above other companies based on culture.
Yeah, focusing on the strength and really building on that strength and really you mentioned alignment, which is a major piece of of what companies sometimes forget. Like you said, lots of them they want to make money, which becomes number one priority. And unfortunately, there's some of these loopholes that keeps developing, and it's also stopping them from making real money because turnovers is also a problem. Because each time, if you have turnovers constantly, it also stops you from regular business of deal, slows you down in many areas. And lots of what you've spoken, Steve, has been, you've talked about really dismantling some limiting beliefs. And I mean, part of it is also cultivating champions. I mean, what are some of the most, common limiting beliefs you see in professionals today?
Well, I think that the one that there's a lot of folks, and if I take myself back in the day, that people think, I've got this title or I've got this job description. And the biggest limiting belief is staying within that box. And like I've always considered myself, I'm not a one-trick pony. I can do executive recruiting, I can do project management, I understand operations, I understand technology, but I've always worked within an HR department and I've always focused on talent. But my box, there is no box. I think outside the box. I can work outside the box. So I think the number one limiting belief is when people come to a job, they want to perfect this and that's all they want to do. And then they have to be told to go outside of that box. For me, I'm a little more bold and I ask. And I've always looked at a career this way. The first 3 months is to learn the department, the company, and what your job is. The next 3 months is to perfect that and be the most efficient and the best employee you could possibly be. At 6 months, it's like, what else can I add value? Do I see gaps? Do I see bottlenecks? Is there inefficiencies that I can provide value that are in my greater team or even on the teams that I work with? And then at 9 months, how can I help the company get to their mission, get to their vision? What can I do more outside of my department? And by this, I always ask my boss, I always let them know what I'm doing and I push. One thing that I like to do unique, if I look at people and companies and their performance reviews, most of the time they're done biannually or annually. And they crunch the last November. Let's get our performance reviews in by December. People get bonuses in March. And it's so important. You got 5 weeks, go. I don't ever do that. I don't wait. I set up time with my boss, who I report to every single month for two reasons. One, let's look back and reflect on what I did or didn't do. How good was my performance? Where can I improve? I'm always trying to improve. Two, I also set up time and say, what can I do more? Is it in this department? Is it for the company? Does it match or align with where I want to go professionally? Or does it align with the company? And there's sometimes I step into a role that I really don't know, and I really don't think that I have that ability to do it. But again, I'm outside of my box. I'm contributing to a greater purpose. And that matters the most for me. And if everybody just did that, if they did one task, one little project outside of their box, and if you had 1,000-person company, you're going to get that much output. And it's going to be fun because it's not your day-to-day job. It's a special project. It's a short-term project. It is a stretched assignment. And that to me is the first limiting belief that people have is they can't do that. And it doesn't matter what level you are. You could do that as a vice president. You could do that as a manager. You can do that as an individual contributor. But people are so focused on this is my job, this is my job description, stay in that swim lane. I always say I don't want a swim lane. I want the whole pool. I want to be able to swim around. And again, I ask for permission as I move through that process. I don't just willy-nilly and go and do it, but I'm open about it. I'm bold about it.
Yeah, I really enjoy what you just said there. And I want us to really just highlight something, what does intentional leadership looks like in real action?
So intentional leadership for me is it really requires individuals, and I love working with emerging leaders, people that want to be leaders, and I have mentor programs. But with that, you've just got to take a good look at yourself. There was one of my favorite bands growing up in high school. They had a song called Introspection, and that really resonated with me. And part of I can change myself, but I don't want to change it from the outside. It's not about perception. It's about intention. It's about internal. So I always say inward before outward. So being an intentional leader, it's not just using it as a catchphrase. It's not just saying it in a boardroom and saying, "Oh, I've got the right intentions. Look at me." It's not a perception. It is something you have to live by, but it has to be ingrained. And I truly believe that it has to be part of your character as a person, which is also woven into your personal life. What you bring to the office and what you take home from the office is just as important as what you say or do inside that office or inside that company. Like I talk about passion, purpose, and intent. I find my passion, I know it. I know what my greater purpose is. Now go out and take action. So intent can be just as simple as take action every day and walk towards your goal or towards your process. It can be a very simple philosophy, or it can be very complex on I'm leading a team and how am I going to lead this project and this person? Because there's going to be some differentiators between what this project outcome needs and what this person needs, A, from me, or B, how to thrive in the job. And those are two different perspectives. And sometimes that's taxing on the mind. That's draining because that's a lot of thought process. But the more you do it, the more you're used to it, the easier it's going to become. And it's going to become second nature. It's going to be natural, but it's not saying it, it's doing it.
Yeah, saying versus doing. And it's so easy for most people to say things that they never do just because one, they want people to feel they're doing a good job, but in the end, they just want to earn a salary. So now looking at the practical part of it, which you just elaborated on, how does a leader move from managing performance to unlocking potential?
So I think that's a really good one. So I talked earlier just briefly, and I won't go into depth about this employee engagement tool that we use in the assessment. So I've gone through a lot of different assessments over the years. I'm talking even prior to the military, like who is Steve Higgy, right? What am I? What are my strengths? And there has been evolutions. My strengths have gotten stronger and my weaknesses have gotten weaker. But if they're managing performance, I truly believe that companies do not have the right performance metrics in place. They talk about learning and development. They talk about succession planning. They talk about upskilling their workforce. And a lot of that stuff is done in like a small classroom inside the company, directed by the company. There is their training platforms. What I've learned is sometimes you've got to get outside of the company and learn a different perspective. Go to a different association, go to an annual meeting, go to a training class that is not led by the company, that's not influenced by the company. To me, if companies could do that more and get and allow the individual, the employee, to go where they think they want to go. Obviously, it needs to be approved, but it should be encouraged. And it should be, is it towards their career path? There are some people that get into recruiting and they want to be in marketing or they want to be in operations. They don't want to stay in recruiting. So why keep them down and hold them to recruiting? Allow them to grow and flourish. But before they leave, make sure they transfer that knowledge to the next person that's taken over for them. And make sure that you track their performance based on where do they see efficiencies. One of the best leaders that I've ever met, probably 15 years ago, he was taking over this huge division for this privately held company. We had thousands and thousands of employees. He flew out and he couldn't meet me in my office. So I had to go to San Diego, which is 90 miles away, and share my time with another individual. But he asked me one question. He sat down in a room and he's like, "You got me for a half an hour. I am yours, undivided. How would you run this company?" And it wasn't a company whole, it was a department, right? And he sat back and just listened to me for 15 or 20 minutes, talk about efficiencies, talk about where our strengths lie and let's grow, and then talk about let's remove these barriers because this doesn't work. And he took down all these notes. He went to 50 different offices. So he had over 100 different opinions. And he formulated this business plan, brought us all into a meeting, flew us all out. I forget what location. And we sat there and we were in a huge round table for all day. And he broke down every single person's strengths, weaknesses, and those are areas for improvement. Said, this is how we are going to drive this department to be successful. You all said it. Here's the common denominators. Here's the outliers and differentiators. But here's what we're going to go. Do you all buy into that? Do you all believe that? Can we get this together? Can we grow? And then we debated tightening it up. So we literally helped him with his vision, his mission, and his overall greater purpose on how we're going to get there. And within 2.5 years, we achieved our goals quicker than we thought we could. He brought us all back and we celebrated. And I had some little piece of helping that form. I drove for business. Obviously, there was, money involved, but we had the success together. I've seen that one time in my career. That to me is how you manage performance. You get me embedded in what is the department or the company's vision. You allow me an opportunity to have a seat at the table and share my thoughts. You don't have to take them all, but let me share them. Let me be part of the team. I don't want to just sit on the bench. And then let's drive towards that together. So I'm engaged. I'm immersed into that. I'm just not coming into a company and saying, oh, that's your vision. Okay, I can read it. Okay, I'm going to believe it. No, you got to feel it. You got to believe it. That's how practical leaders manage performance properly.
Oh yeah, that is so good. I mean, I just hearing that is really good to me because I've been in companies where senior leadership just has something in mind and they just all they want to do, everybody needs to align. So it's not about putting people around the table to share opinions or get them involved in it. It's more or less about this is the direction, this is the strategy. Everybody needs to move towards that direction. If you either move towards it or you leave the bandwagon. It's two things. That's the door if you don't want to move. So it's really good to hear you talk about that involvement and how that meant and how they could relate to really managing potential, managing performance, and also unlocking potential to get people to contribute and get them feel that they're part of a system, which is really good. So, Steve, you're known for electrifying rooms and creating experiences that people can feel. What's
Yeah.
the difference between just motivating people temporarily or transforming them in a sustainable manner?
No, this is a question I love as well. So I look at coaching and mentorship totally different. Early on in my career to probably mid-career, I was a great coach. I didn't realize I was a mentor. And I don't want to get all biblical on you, but there is some great mentors out there that are just spiritual aligners. And if I take that into my personal life and I take that into a company or business setting, I look at the mentorship, and each person is different. There's no two humans that are alike. There's no two thought processes, no two ecosystems. Now, you can closely assimilate with a company and try to mirror their culture or you have the same job or the same title, but no two people do the same job the same way. There's always some differentiators. And you really need to recognize that. But I really, really focus on the strengths of that individual. But I also take it the next level and say, where does their passion lie? Where do they really want to be? There might be tasks that they do in their everyday life because we need them to get it done between Monday and Friday and they need to hit this goal. But could we provide some support? Could we automate a few things? Technology is a great opportunity to automate a few things that are mundane that maybe we don't love to do, but the system does. You still have to direct it. You still have to, you know, have it under there. However, what does that person really want to do? And so for me, it's just asking them, it's sitting down, having a cup of coffee or tea or lunch, and getting to know that person in their true setting. What inspires them? Do they read? Do they watch movies? Do they love to play sports? And not focus on just an analogy that might work within that, but again, what is going to help that person thrive? Do they even know what thriving feels like? Like I've been at the top of the mountain before and I've been at the bottom of the hill. And there's a difference. And there's that certain amount of evolution that takes you to get up that hill. But once you're there, that's not the peak, that's not the valley. Now the next hill is much bigger. Where do they want to go? What do they want to believe? There are some people that I've loved to death that come in and just do their job Monday through Friday, 40 hours a work week and go home. They don't want to get to that next level. So I know that I'm not going to be able to push them. I don't use a word like challenge. Let me challenge you with this. Like, I don't want to take them out of their comfort zone. If this is where they're great and that's what they love and that's the life they want, perfect. I can accept that. Now I know who's on my team, but I don't challenge them. I encourage them, So I use different words at times, right? I don't like it when folks come into me and say, I've got this, this goal. I'm going to challenge you with rising to it. No, don't challenge me. I've been challenged my whole life. I know I can rise up. Why don't you encourage me? Why don't you empower me? Why don't you help me? So those are things that I like to do with individuals at all levels and talk to them about what do they want to accomplish and let them know that they're needed. Their impact in this team, in this company is highly rewarded. This is where we need you. This is where we want you. But if there's anywhere you want to go above and beyond that, let me know. I'm here for you. Let's talk about it. Let's chart a course to help you get there. For me, I'm just self-motivated. Other people, you have to sort of push into it a little bit. But again, it's empowering and encouraging, but it's getting to know them. You can't just talk to them. You've got to know them and understand. And I don't think there's enough leaders out there and enough companies that they say, I don't have the time. Well, here's the other side to that. If you don't, there's a saying that you could train your best people and they may leave you. You could also train good people and they may stay with you. So you've got to put your heart into them. If you don't have time to talk to them 2, 3, 4 times a year, what's going to happen when they leave? That time you could have spent encouraging them and retaining them is now spent on, I don't have a person doing this task. I got to go find someone. There's way more time in re-recruiting, rehiring for the same job. You just lost someone that had all this knowledge about your department, your company, and you let them go because you didn't care about them enough. But now you're going to hire someone new that you have to train. Trust me, that takes way more time and energy and money than it does investing a half an hour 4 times a year. That's only 2 hours out of your life to talk to someone. That also aligns with their performance review. It aligns with where do they want to go with the company, but it allows them to be part of the team. But it's doing it authentically, not doing it because it's a checkbox. But that's the best way that I've seen it, what has worked in all the companies I've been, is to empower that individual to move in the direction of their career and help them get there.
Yeah, I mean, you highlighted a couple of solid points right there, and you talked about, you know, being in the valley, being on top of a mountain. I mean, you talked about your own personal experiences, how you've been challenged. I mean, how do you personally stay energized and grounded while carrying this level of intensity and inspiration?
So for me, it's taken a lot of years, I'm going to say decades to get to where I'm at. And I'm still climbing. I'm still going. My goals are much bigger. But what I've done is I thought I always had to reverse my life and say, okay, this is what I want to do when I retire, and these are the things I'm going to do to get there. And I always thought that I had to have this master plan and it had to be articulated very well. What I've learned through another coach of mine, um, Beth Robbins, she's down in San Diego, she made a comment about just your vision. Just know what your vision is. And she encouraged me to really seek that and find out, okay, I think I know how to get there, but I might not walk that way. My career might changes. Again, I'm a consultant, so I work for a lot of different companies. And every 6 months or year, I might be on a different project. So I might bob and weave. It's not a straight line, but my vision does not change. And so for me, when I was young, that 15-year-old boy, I didn't have a vision. I didn't have a goal. I had dreams, but now I wake up and I take action towards those dreams, and those are my goals. And now when I reach my goals, that is one step towards my vision. It's all interwoven. However, what is some people will call it a North Star? What's your North Star? How are you tracking? If you're lost out in the desert and you had no compass, you got to find that North Star and walk towards it, right? That's going to get you to possibly safety in a sense, right? But what is your North Star with your personal and professional life? How does that interact? So for me, the groundedness and the intensity is what I've said earlier is my introspection. I'm going to get there. I've got the resilience. I've got the grit. So I have to be self-motivated every day. And I use this saying that I wake up with determination every single day. And I don't want to go to bed until I'm satisfied. And it's almost till I want to just work till exhaustion because I want to give everything into my day. And I know some people talk about work-life balance. There is no such work-life balance in my life, but there's work-life harmony. I've learned to harmonize my life. I take my breaks, I take my time off. I know when to recharge. So I know a lot about myself, but it's taken decades to get to this level. I've even worked with some spiritual leaders on how to be able to implement and reset quicker. If I'm having a bad day, that doesn't ruin my whole week, my whole month. That just ruins my moment. It does not ruin my day. I can reset. But it's taken me years and years to get to that grounded level of intensity. But I've always been this intense. And to be very honest, this is even me holding back. This is me dialing it down. There's so much more intensity inside me that I don't exude because I keep that energy here for when I need it, when I have a hard task or a sprint. But it is just always remembering who I am and where I know I want to be in 10 or 15 years, my vision. And then everything else will just work itself out.
Work-life harmony. I love that. I love that. It's always said work-life balance. And I love when you brought in that term of work-life harmony. I mean, that also speaks to how spiritually grounded and personally grounded you are, and how much a lot of those things play into your life. And like you said, it's been decades of learning. And as you keep climbing, I think somebody today is listening and learning as well from your experiences, from the things you've done, and how that has changed a lot of places and the impact that you bring. So, but when you look at the future of work and evolving workplaces, generational shifts in remote culture, I mean, what COVID brought in, I mean, a couple of years back, which we maybe sometimes we never even thought, what kind of leaders will thrive in the next decade, in your opinion?
So that's a tough, loaded question, but I love it. And I'll give you an example. COVID was great for me personally, and I know it was not great for a lot of people. And I truly believe that I lost a father because of that, who became he had he had an ailment and he went through a stroke and he never recovered. And I think had COVID not happened, had he not been in the hospital, he might not have had that. So there was some toughness. But for me, it allowed me to reconnect with my wife. It allowed me to stay home and have dinner with her every single night. And what I learned through that reflection, 5, 6 years later, was that created our alignment. This is not only who I married, but this is who I want to be with. This is who I communicate with. This is the most important person in my life. But the reality of it, future workplace, I think a lot of people still look at it as like, this is a job. I go to it. And again, my coach Beth down in San Diego talks about you don't have to do it. You don't need to do it. You get to do it. And it's reframing sort of your words and what you tell yourself every single day makes a difference. But as we come back, return to office, we have remote, we have a lot more technology, AI is kind of coming in. There's a lot of distractions, there's a lot of noise. One thing that frustrates me is job postings. There's so many job postings on the internet, there's so much noise, but the effectiveness of them, it doesn't work. Most people find their jobs through networking, not through a job posting. Now, I'm not to say that that doesn't work, but leaders, when they're coming into this, far greater than hiring people, how are they going to deal with this culture? People working from home, wanting to do this, wanting to do that. Again, I think it comes back to when you bring in folks into your organization, you have an onboarding process. I've had leaders literally pull me aside week one, week two, and they'll sit down for 15 or 20 minutes and they'll ask, what led you to my company? What brought you here? What can I do to help your career? That little 15-minute conversation is so powerful. What happens now is people automate that. They might hire 20 people in a month and they go through this one class, and you have this recorded speaking of a CEO telling them, this is my vision, this is my mission. But that's a robot in a sense. You use that over and over and over again. It's not authentic. So for me, the leaders that are going to thrive in the coming of the future with technology is not to forget that you need to have a humanized approach. Technology is great, but I would rather get on there and say this leader took a half an hour out of their day once a month to talk to the new incoming employees authentically. Doesn't have to be properly dressed, doesn't have to have the perfect lighting. I want authenticity. I want that human connection. If you look at everything that humans are designed to do, it's about love. It's about progression. And if my leader can't take 30 minutes a month to talk to me, he has to record it because he's too busy. How does that make me feel? I'm coming into a company, but it's a job, it's not a career. So leaders are losing their authenticity. The ones that are going to shape the future are going to be authentic. They're going to be human. They're going to use technology for sure, but in the right way at the right time. That to me matters the most. I've got to be able to believe in this person that they are taking me to the right direction. That is my career.
Oh, so many good things that you've mentioned there. I want you to also give us an open reflection here, to someone listening on anything that you feel has been misunderstood, on maybe their potential, on something which could relate to even hiring. I want to just give this floor to you to give some form from open reflection from your own perspective.
No, I appreciate that. See, again, you're allowing me time to say openly, not just be asked questions. And that's really one of the biggest things. I think people undervalue the importance of they need their own time to reflect too, both on their professional life and their personal life. And how does that align? Alignment and harmony, those are some big words that I truly believe you don't even have to be spiritually thinking about that. But that's how you're going to get your best self. And I know that's kind of a cliche, but if you can have a really good home life, you enjoy what you do at home, you live in a nice house or apartment, you drive a decent car, and I'm not talking the best car out there, but you're happy, you're harmony with yourself, you're going to bring a better self to work. And again, I'm a consultant, so I don't ever think that I'm going into a career job. I'm going in because I want to be able to do the heavy lifting. That's just who I am. I'm not afraid of that. I'm not afraid of being uncomfortable. I'm not afraid of learning something, but I also want to get something from the company. It's a two-way street in my book that I will absolutely give 100% if I believe in the leader, if I believe in the project, but I'm going to walk away with some sort of knowledge. I'm going to meet someone, I'm going to do something different, and it's going to be rewarding for me as well. So I'm just not putting in my time and collecting a paycheck. I'm going to get something greater out of it. And then how does that align with my personal life? So for me, it's the harmony, the ebb and flow, the back and forth. And again, there's no balance. I work way more than I have fun. But the amount of fun that I do have is what I need. That's what, and I love work, by the way. I'm very passionate about it. I enjoy that. And I don't think I'll ever retire. I'll probably be semi-retired. But my goal is to teach people the knowledge, but it's how to be one with yourself. And again, this just didn't happen overnight. I didn't know this when I was 15. Like I've been striving for this for a long time. And it's not just taking an assessment. It's truly knowing. And I have had defining moments outside of the Navy where my career has shifted. And I've gone in this direction as a recruiter, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, I'm a project manager. And the next thing you know, I'm in operations. And so It's not a straight line, but it's giving yourself a little bit of grace. But every day, just walking in the direction of your vision. And that's what I would encourage folks to look at is know yourself and what you want and don't want out of life and your job and how does that align, but know your vision, where you want to be. Doesn't matter if it's 1 year you focus on that or if it's 15 or 20 years, but where do you want to be, and then just keep walking in that step, and eventually every single step you'll walk a million miles and you'll get there.
I love that. Know yourself and your vision. One of the things I'm personally big on is, think and build your own mission statements. I mean, companies build mission statements, organizations build mission statements. Think and build your own mission statement. Have a vision, have a dream, and all of that ties to what's your purpose. I mean, Steve, you just hit the nail on the head on so many amazing things. And I think there's somebody listening today that is taking notes and that is learning, and that will forever not be the same simply because of some of the lessons that you shared today. So, as we begin to wrap up our show for today, we have a tradition at the Voice of Impact, which we normally call it's our word die that we use. And a couple of words there that you can definitely see.
Yep.
You can see a few of them. I will definitely call them out just so that you could definitely see. And you choose two from this word die. Number one is make a difference, rebuild, overcome, stronger, peace, patience. I repeat again, make a difference, rebuild, overcome, stronger, peace, and patience. So I allow you to choose two out of those words, out of those, I call them more or less empowering themes. So you can choose two out of them. One for which links to your own journey, and then the other for somebody listening today.
Yep. No, I appreciate that. For me, I choose rebuild. And I look at it as I'm not trying to define my life, but I'm constantly redefining myself. So I'm constantly rebuilding myself. I'm getting rid of things that no longer serve me, and I'm bringing in the positivity of things that are going to help propel me forward in my vision. For someone else, I always encourage them to make a difference and make a difference far greater than themselves. Don't just work and get that paycheck. Don't just be a good husband, don't just go to church or go to the community. Make a difference in a greater impact. And that's what I encourage folks to reach out and just do something that's maybe outside their comfort zone, whatever that looks like, whether it's at work, the community, it's at home, and make a greater impact.
Make a difference, make a difference. That's always major. So Steve, we will not wrap this up without, give you an opportunity for you to tell our listeners how they can connect with you. How can someone connect with you to learn more about what you do, or even wanna, you are a consultant. If somebody wants to engage with you in the work you do, how can they get to you?
Yep. No, I appreciate that. I have two websites. One is very easy. It's just stevehiggy.com. So Steve, Higgy.com. That is more of my coaching. And then I have one that's hypo services. So HIPO. So high potential. And then services. That is more for my clients, my customers. And you can go in there and put a comment. It'll come right to my phone here and I'll get that. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I'm under executive recruiter talent acquisition, but you can find me under Steve Higgy or Higginbotham.
Steve, thank you for your energy, your clarity, and commitment to developing leaders who don't just occupy roles, but they elevate systems. Today's conversation reminds us that talent isn't just everything. It must be cultivated intentionally. And leadership isn't just about performance metrics. It's about unlocking people. It's about giving people space. And to the person listening right now, your growth is not accidental. Your potential is not random. And your next level begins with intentional action. And Steve outlined a couple of actions that you could take. And if at all you're struggling on any of these aspects, Steve has also elaborated on how you could reach him. Please reach out to him. He's also willing to just chat and give you some tips and direct you, no matter how that looks like. And if you need some support, especially recruiting and all of those other aspects, Steve is an expert and he'll be more than happy to support in that domain to help you really build people and not just, think that you're doing something else while everybody else is just about a paycheck. You really want to make a difference, just like Steve said. We are Ndoping and Co. performance designers and strategy coaches. We support entrepreneurs and nonprofits in establishing a sustainable system for measurable output. We coach, we clarify, we redefine, and we support organizational entrepreneurial strategy, and we build capacity for alignment of a system that gives back time and establishes a work culture, provides the strength to withstand changes during business turbulence. Our website is www.ndopingco.com, and our business email is coaching@ndopco.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Ndoping Coaching, and on LinkedIn, Robert Ndoping, and on Instagram, Ndoping_CO. We have been privileged to have Steve today on the Voice of Impact, and he has spoken a lot of things that align with what we do as a business and as a person. And it just lightens my heart to really talk to like-minded professionals that have been doing this for decades. And he also elaborated on his journey from what he learned from the Navy right up to what he's doing right now. And I would really encourage you if you're listening. And if any of these things relate with you, please contact Steve. This has been the Voice of Impact. Until next time, keep growing, keep leading, and keep using your voice. Steve, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. Wonderful
And
conversation.
it's very simple. Empower as many people as possible. Empower as many leaders as possible. Touch as many, professionals as I can. Be able to make a difference.